And as I mentioned, we don't half-ass, we whole-ass.
Yep, that's right.
Like cooking, everything has a recipe.
A set of instructions to follow in order to gain a certain result.
Music is no different.
Be it ingredients for a dish, a set list for an amazing show,
Or a release strategy for a successful launch.
these are all recipes.
Hi, we're your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brandon.
Come and join us in our kitchen as we go through the Music Makers Cookbook.
Let's get cooking.
Welcome to the Music Makers Cookbook, the podcast that helps independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. I'm Sean.
I'm Brandon. I love your rhythm on those.
I appreciate it. It's gotten really down pat.
It is.
It's the same every single time.
Yeah, it's really nice, actually. It's really nice. I just wanted to say that real quick.
Appreciate it. Good
Yeah,
old
of course.
reliable, whipping it out every single time.
Right? It's almost like a jingle at this point.
For podcast, for audio only listeners, that was an awkward silence. But
Yeah.
for
We
video
were kind of
listeners,
dancing.
Yeah, you got the groove going on.
Yeah, we got the rhythm going on.
Yeah, that's been consistent every episode, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
But also, I'm trying to bring some other things back that I used to do for this podcast and kind of bring new consistency to it. Like I'm bringing back, believe it or not, merch when I'm not having
Yeah,
this
hell
for a
yeah, dude.
while. I feel really bad stopping it because that was like one of our biggest momentum things. Like it would average around 2,500 plays.
They're cool episodes.
They
They're
are.
little shorts.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting stuff.
Mhm.
And like it's some really weird stuff out there. But the whole purpose is, as an independent artist, merch can be kind of confusing or hard to get into.
For sure, yeah.
Just the classic T-shirts, hats, stickers, things like that. Everybody pulls from.
Yep.
But it's really to highlight that there's some really cool and unique things you can put out there.
Yeah.
For example, Miley Cyrus sold 24 karat rolling papers.
Wild. That is wild.
Such crazy stuff out there like that.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited to bring that back and talk about some interesting things
Yeah.
that are happening out there. I think the next episode that's going to come out either right before or right after this airs is the Beatles. They've had some crazy stuff out there. I could probably do the whole series just on Beatles merch.
Jeez, I
but-
believe it though.
But they had officially licensed Beatles stockings that had the faces of the Beatles as the pattern on the leggings.
Wow.
So very, very interesting, very weird.
Very interesting.
So yeah, that's a new thing that I'm starting back up again. You know, an oldie, but like new to bring it back in my system again. You got anything new going on?
Yeah, so I finally gave in and buying a higher tier of Google G Suite. I was trying so hard for so long just to do the 30 gigabyte one and just delete stuff after like 2 weeks of time being up there because I have it specified in my email of delivery. Got to download this within 2 weeks because otherwise I'm wiping it. It's gone off the internet and then I'll have to re-upload it. You know, I have to request for another upload. And it's not like I'm deleting the files. I'm just deleting it off my Google Drive. Well, unfortunately, I got to a point where all my emails have now amassed up to almost 30 gigs, and I can't actually delete those without deleting important stuff at this point. So I'm just going to pay the extra $5 a month and not be cheap. So now I have 2 terabytes of storage on there.
Nice.
And now I'm like, okay, cool. Well, now I can actually have like separate like folders for everybody on there. So I could just upload to their corresponding folder. It could just stay up there for as long as I can leave it up there for, and they can pull from it for many times. So I've been trying to experiment with that. I don't really have a solid system down for it at the moment, just because like the way that I upload stuff, I upload it directly to the email. But I should probably upload it directly to Google Drive and then put it on the email. So that's gonna like a workflow change that I gotta like do and just remember to do at this point. So maybe I'll try it out today because I do have to send something off today. But that's been my new little experiment and just trying to keep everything tidy online and, you know, so people can access their files when they want to. It's almost like their own little portal, you know, client portal that they can go and grab from whenever they need. But that's going to eat up that's going to eat up a lot of storage though. So I got to really decide. I'm like, I got to really see how this goes, you know, through the first few months.
2 terabytes is a lot more than 30 gigs, though.
It is.
So
It is.
We'll see how fast it fills up, but
Yeah.
it might be a little bit easier than you think.
I hope
Especially since
so.
you're just uploading final projects,
not whole
projects
sessions.
and sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing recently.
Cool.
That's been my little experiment.
That's a fun new thing to be doing.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I've got a couple new things as well that I kind of didn't talk about earlier, but like there's this new recording technique that I really want to show you. It's really interesting. Also I got there's this new 1073 clone. Did you hear about the new 1073 clone? I'd love to get my hands on and mess around with that. But actually while I'm speaking about that, there's a bus compressor that I have that I really need to build. I probably want to start that soon because I want to get that taken care of. Because I'm working on a new song that I really want to use that on. I think it'd be great to kind of glue it all together. And also there's this mix I'm working on that I want to show you, and I think I might have a problem, Brandon.
I think you do have a problem, Sean. Maybe you should stick to one of those. Maybe
I should.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think what I have is called?
I think you might have shiny object syndrome and SOS for short. And
SOS for
it's
sure.
definitely an SOS over there, brother.
I wrote
Definitely
this-
SOS.
I wrote this down as a joke, as a segue.
Yeah.
All these things are true.
You know what's funny though is that every time when Sean and I meet, he'll talk to me about a new piece of gear or something that just came out, and like I've had really bad like gas, and I'm not saying that you have gas right now, but I'm just saying I've had really bad gas in the past.
Your acquisition syndrome, by the way.
Yep.
Doesn't mean I'm farty.
Episode something. And we have talked about that in the past. So it is
just like Brandon bringing up, like, yeah, Sean's got really bad gas.
I have really bad gas.
It's a chore
actually, yeah.
recording every time I'm with him.
My tummy hurts. You know? You know, I've had it really bad in the past where I've been very focused on like the gear stuff, and like somehow I broke it somewhere along the way. I was just like, I just can't pay attention. I think I just like maxed out my mental bandwidth at this point, you know. But I'll talk to Sean about other things like I'm doing like Pokemon games and shit, you know. So like we both come to the table with shiny new shit every fucking week, dude. I
It's the
swear.
thing that everybody has.
Everybody has.
And it's a constant struggle, especially in the music industry.
Absolutely.
Yep. So yeah, we're talking about shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, if you didn't gather that from this, we're talking about shiny object syndrome today.
Yeah. So what is shiny object syndrome?
Yeah,
Brandon,
I mean,
you're always so great at putting on the definitions of what these things are. So do you mind?
Wow, you just
telling
teed
us
me
what
up.
they
I'm
are?
gonna fucking eat shit now. Basically, I want to say this first, real quick. You know, as a business, because that's what you are, as a musician, you are a business. If you're trying to do this full time, you have a lot to do on your plate, and that can amass to be many, many different things. You wear a lot of hats along the way. That is just a part of what you are as an entrepreneur, as a musician that wants to be full time. You will come across shiny object syndrome if you already haven't at this point, right? And like this could start really early, like even just thinking about the dream of being a musician, you get it right away, like because you're always just trying to focus on other things, right? Shiny object syndrome is basically the habit of constantly trying let me restart that. Shiny object syndrome is basically the habit of constantly searching for something new to do or buy for yourself or your business, but not actually finishing the task at hand before moving on, or learning the thing you just bought before buying a new thing, right?
Yeah.
This can be a never-ending feedback loop of distraction. That's really what we're talking about today, is a lot of distractions right here. And unfortunately for us, it seems like creatives are more susceptible to this.
Yes.
So
they are.
Just by being creative, it's your job to create. Yeah, that's just what it is. And, getting caught up in the latest and greatest thing, you receive a little bit more of a dopamine rush from the new things. The old tasks are not necessarily as fun to do. Maybe you get a lot of mental fatigue with them. It's also natural too. You can actually go back to episode 37. I looked it up before we did this. Go back to episode 37 where we talk about having that. That's the first episode of our influence series where we talk about having the mental bypass of decision making, because it's tasking us. So we just automatically click run and decide something on a whim, and that all plays into shiny object syndrome. But the dopamine thing is probably the biggest one, because we receive a lot of reward for discovering new things, and then once we grow tired of it, we kind of fall off a little bit. And that could also be described as like more of like a bell-shaped curve or an exponential thing, right? So we receive a lot of dopamine in the beginning, and then we start to plateau and level off, and all of a sudden it's not as fun anymore, and then we drop it and we go find the next thing that'll give us a big dopamine rush. So that is shiny object syndrome in a nutshell, both in a very layman's terms, psychology basis, and a general way of saying it. So there you go. There's my definition. hope I did well.
No, it's a good definition. It is the definition. And as you kind of alluded to, this is incredibly prominent in the music industry, which is why it's relevant to you listening to this right now, and why it's important to kind of build things and systems to help combat it. Because in the music industry, like as you mentioned, we are creatives. We want to create music, create new live experiences, create videos and ways of representing the thoughts inside of our head and the music that we are putting out to our fans and the things that we want to create, to build. Creating is the whole thing.
Yeah.
We want to start new things, breeding things into existence that didn't previously exist, because it's fun, it's new, it's exciting. Stop me if this is you, or if it sounds familiar to you. You're working on a song that has just been dragging on for weeks, months, years even. Yeah. And it's just the slog of it. You go back again. It might be a really, really good song, but you're just kind of going back to it. And as you go on, you kind of lose the allure of it, lose interest into it. So you start a new song. Yep. And then you move on from that. And then you don't really quite finish it. So you start a new song, and then a new song. If you've got more, like a crazy amount of unfinished songs, not everyone's got unfinished songs. Some of them just aren't going to be full songs. But if you have a bunch of unfinished songs that could be full songs, you could really fully develop to make some awesome music, but you just don't, because it's not no longer new, no longer exciting. Yep. That's Probably because of shiny object syndrome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes it can be writer's block. I will say that, there's, devil's advocate to all this, of course, but Sean's right. Most of the time it is probably due to shiny object syndrome. And that was going to be one of the things that I was going to mention too, by the way, is like having a symptom of is you have a bunch of unfinished music that you haven't finished at this point. Another thing is like you have a bunch of tasks that you haven't done at this point, right? So if you have a van for your band, you haven't aired up the tires, you haven't gotten an oil change, you haven't put new coolant in the radiator, all these things can actually add up and actually do damage over time, right? Last episode we had just talked about the 4 quadrants of time management. Those things actually get sorted in, over time. So like the things that I just mentioned could be urgent and important to do right before you go on a month-long tour or a couple months long tour, right? So shiny object syndrome, I think the worst part about this in this case is that having shiny object syndrome can make you feel like you're being productive without actually being productive.
Yes, you're doing stuff. You are busy. You're like, oh, I'm working every day. I got all this music that I'm working on. I've got like 50 songs. I could make, so many albums. The amount of time I've heard that as a studio owner talking to musicians, and they're like, hey, I've got this song I want to have mixed and mastered. I want to record this song. It's like, great. Tell me a bit about it. Tell me a bit about the project. Oh yeah, I've got this album that I want to put together. I've been working on it for years. I got like 50 songs that I could pull from. It's like, well, none of them are done. None of them are out.
Right.
Instead of like 50 songs, let's start putting them out. Let's start finishing these projects. And a lot of times people realize that, and that's why they come to a studio or an engineer like us, is they realize like, oh crap, I've got all this music that's not out there.
Yeah.
Time to get it out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Time to actually complete the journey. Of the song.
We'll help manage the time a little bit. We come in as almost project managers at that point. Now, some people come in when they're very like stout in what they want to do and they have a plan. That's cool, and we'll follow that plan. But more oftentimes than not, we do become the project managers at some point, and that's fine because that's a hat we choose to wear. There are engineers out there that won't do that. They will just literally trade time and record and whatever. But it's just we see this an awful lot.
Yeah,
like a ton, and like I get it because I've been there, done that, and still do it to this day. Like I'm not immune to this at all. Of course, it's just about being conscious and like and recognizing when you're having SOS and how to kind of mitigate that.
And when you recognize it, if you don't mind me jumping in,
no, please go ahead.
When you do recognize it, you may be thinking like, well, so what? Now I have 50 different songs. That's fantastic. If I want to make a bunch of music, then the fact that I've composed or started composing all these different songs, that can be a good thing. The fact that I've started all these projects, like now I have some basic now I have some basic design templates for promoting shows, and I've got like a basic stage plot and like things like that. It may feel like, oh, I've set all these things up, I've planned all these things up, I have all these foundations. It may not feel like such a bad thing because, as you mentioned, like the downside, like a big thing about it is you feel like you're being productive, but you're not really finishing anything. And that's kind of like main consequences that happen from this. Yeah. It's the delusion of efforts and the lack of progress in these key projects that actually make the difference. Yeah. If you might feel like you're being a musician, but if you're not putting your stuff out there, not getting a return on your investment, then it's not an investment. It's a spent of time. You're not investing in your music or your career. Also, if you're constantly jumping from thing to thing to thing, that can lead to burnout because you're not actually getting the reward from completing the effect. If you're trying to practice and learn these skills or learn these songs, then and you just start it, but you don't actually finish it, there's no final reward of being able to play the whole thing through and just feeling like, yes, I did this. I completed this. Now I can move on, and I have this in my tool belt that I can pull out. Either play a cover or learn techniques from it. So burnout's a huge thing from it. This also can lead to financial strain. That's another big consequence of it. New projects, starting new things. Not only does it take time, it's a time investment, but it can also take money.
Big time too.
Yeah. Especially if you want to try getting the new piece of gear to get this new sound because it sounds really exciting to you. Like, oh, this is the next hot microphone. I need to buy this so that my vocals sound even better than they do now. You're paying money for that. Yeah, absolutely. And if you are going into the studio to try recording these new songs, but not really going through and completing the process, you're paying somebody else hourly to get this project started that you're not completing yourself. A lot of these things are really important. That's why you're interested and invested in doing them. But when you start them and don't complete them, the time and the money that you put in, as I mentioned before, will never see a return upon it.
Yeah.
You need to have it completed to put it out there in order to get a return.
No, great point. Great point. And the worst part, I think, like out of all this all kind of leads to this last point, is that everything that you do, not trying to be mean, but if you have it, is half-assed. It truly is, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not putting your all into it. You don't see the project all the way through, right? So
here at the Music Makers Cookbook, we firmly believe in whole-assing it.
That's
no
right.
half-assing.
Whole ass.
Put the whole ass in.
Whole ass. Not to be confused with asshole. Get it?
I do.
You can delete that if you want.
Nope, that's staying in.
Perfect.
A zinger from Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, you become almost like a jack of all trades, master of none at that point, because you're always trying to search for that new thing to learn, that new thing to play with, and you don't actually end up becoming good at one thing, or your song doesn't realize itself and become good because you focused on it for so long, or the project, or whatever the case may be. So shiny object syndrome can have some bad repercussions, and it's very, very hard to break and realize what you're doing is wrong if you're caught up in it, right? Because I did this for a really long time, especially when I was first starting out. It would just be new thing. And like, you couldn't tell me shit. It was always the new thing, right? Until like it became real, where it was like, oh, I have to learn these things that I've gathered along the way. And then the worst part about shiny object syndrome is that when you finally catch on to it, you have to go back and relearn everything thoroughly and really learn how to use these items that you might have bought, use these techniques that you've learned along the way, and then really become the master. So really, you're kind of double investing time when you could have just invested once in the first part of it, right? Instead of going back and retracking your steps. Yeah. And that's probably the worst part of it.
Exactly. So to kind of emphasize it, let's real quick do a thought experiment.
Yeah.
And you might think, okay, cool, but I know all these things. I have all these skills. Jack of all trades, master of none. That's an asset. I can do all these things. And as you mentioned, there's so much you have to do when you are in a band or running your music career.
Yeah.
Because you are a business. There's a lot to do. It may seem like, okay, it's beneficial to have some skills in all of these categories. But for huge success, what you want are the masters. If you want an amazing sounding song and you go to a recording studio and the engineer is like, yeah, I do some rap, I do some metal, I do some hip hop, I do some folk, I do some gospel, and you're like, well, I'm a pop artist.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I do some pop too. I'll make your song, like, it'll sound great. Don't worry about it. It's going to sound okay because like they know some techniques, but if it's somebody who lives and breathes pop, who really, really knows how to make that genre sound super clean and professional, that's the studio that you want to go to.
Totally.
You want the master. I know you do. If you were trying to get a session musician to come in and play a bass line, and like, oh yeah, I play guitar, I play bass, I play piano, I play drums, I'm kind of all around everything. Or you have the option to get a bassist who plays for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, tours with some awesome bands, and is just able to come in and really nail down an awesome bass line first take and bring new ideas to the table because that's all they do, live, breathe, and play bass. You're going to want that bass player. You're not going to want someone who can do everything. Niching down and mastering is such an helpful thing to get a best product. We talk about niching all the time on this podcast because specializing and being really, really good at what you do is incredibly important. So now think about, well, if I'd rather hire an expert than hire an amateur, why would somebody else want to hire you? Like if you aren't amazing at putting on a live show because you've spread yourself too thin, why would a venue want to hire you if you just put on an performance, don't inspire people to go to the bar, buy drinks, get them a return on the investment. Maybe we'll have them back, but we don't want them consistently. Or if you're not dedicated to your craft of performing and playing your instrument, you come into the studio, it's like, yeah, it's a okay song. It's a good performance. It's not polished. It could use a little bit here and there. There's 40 to 60,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every single day. Why would somebody want to invest in yours when there's their time in listening to your music, when there's awesome, perfectly, amazingly crafted songs out there that you have to compete with?
Yeah.
So
well said.
Thinking about what your goals are, which you can go to episode 6, SMART goals, and then kind of just defining what you want to do really, really helps make you better at the things that you need to be better on, decide what you can give to other people, delegate some tasks, and just help set yourself above the competition, not alongside the rest of it, which leads into how can you resolve shiny object syndrome?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like I said, first it becomes becoming conscious of what you're doing, right? And that could manifest itself in multiple different ways. And there's not one set way. Maybe it's one day you wake up and you realize that you haven't done anything this week. And you're like, oh, I have no money coming in. Maybe I should actually go like work on something, right? Or, hey, I haven't been to the studio in so long because I've been writing all these new riffs and I just can't put them together. But maybe I should sit down and write one of these. Or, I mean, like I said, it can manifest itself in so many different ways. Stress, financial stress, which is probably one of the worst ones, because that takes a toll on everything. Relationships, anything. So how do you become conscious of it? You really don't. It just manifests itself eventually, and you catch on to it. Hopefully,
hopefully this episode makes you become aware.
Yeah, maybe you'll become more
conscious
aware of it. After listening to this episode, you can reevaluate. Sean did something great last episode where we talked about the 4 quadrants, where he evaluates where his time is managed, right, and how it's spent. So he does an audit every quarter, and will reevaluate his time management, and that could even bring out oh shit, I've been spending too much time focusing on these new things when I should really just be focusing on the fundamentals or whatever.
Yeah, scheduling an audit is a huge way to bring it to your attention.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So once you do have it brought to your attention, the first thing that we think would be helpful in how to resolve shiny object syndrome is to identify what your core goals are. Yeah. Once you know what you really want to do, it helps identify, well, what am I doing that's part of this and what's not part of this? To identify our core goals, both short and long term, we recommend checking out episode 6, which is all about SMART goals, which identifies your short-term plan as well as your long-term plan, and really taking a look at thinking about, okay, what do I want to achieve personally, professionally, and financially? And then once you have that down on paper, you can look at what you're doing, fill out our 4 quadrants thing, the time management matrix, which was last episode, which if you check that out, there's a template to download to fill it out, so that will help you get that put all together. Once you have that, you have what your goals are, and then what you are doing, whether or not it falls under your goals or it doesn't. That allows you to then say, okay, these things I can now put aside. I started them because they're interesting and fun, because they're a shiny object, but these are the things that really serve me. When you have a clear idea what you need to do, that gives you a path forward. Without it, you're just kind of wandering around aimlessly. Absolutely. And when you're wandering around aimlessly, your brain's going to find things that are interesting to do, leading back to more shiny object syndrome.
That's the feedback loop right there, is that itself. And even to add on top of that, what Sean just said is, practicing maybe to committing to small tasks first, because the more small tasks you complete, maybe the more dopamine reward that you get in your brain, right? And you're like, wow, this is really good. I'm being very productive. Hopefully. Not in the 4th quadrant of last episode, right? But I'm being very productive. And now I'm going to go try to tackle larger tasks ahead. A great book for that is Atomic Habits.
I was going to say that.
James Clear.
Stacking up small wins builds the momentum to making big changes because you are getting these small victories.
Exactly. Another book that's really good for is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. That's another good one. I recommend probably Atomic Habits first, then The Compound Effect. But that's just me personally.
I also recommend The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That really goes in depth about it. If you read Atomic Habits and then want to take a deep dive into it, I recommend that as another follow-up.
And I think another book that we could also recommend is The 80-20 Principle as well. I forgot who that's by.
I haven't read that one yet.
I haven't read it either, but I know the general.
But we recommend it.
Yeah, I know the general concept of it, and it's just explain the 80-20 rule. And how you can apply it to your life. So that would be an easy way to kind of start out, Do you want to say the next one, or you want to add on top of that?
Well, I mean, the next thing is once you have your strategic plan, you've created your SMART goals, you put together the quadrants, and you have your roadmap on what you need to do, like through the SMART goals, what you have to do next, and then next, and then next, implementing a decision-making framework so that you know quickly what their next steps are, without having to constantly look for something new to do. You can just revert back to this, and it tells you what you have to do next. That helps fill in the brain's search for tasks and for interest. We don't like being bored. That's why short form video is taking over the world right now. Because we hate being bored. Where you go to satiate your brain's need for new things to do defines whether or not you move forward or you stay where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So once you create these documents, using them to look at what your next tasks are, your next steps are, that's how you move forward. And then building discipline and accountability to actually follow through with it. This is the final part of getting past shiny object syndrome.
Yep.
Discipline is like a self thing.
Yes, it
Learning
is.
techniques that you need to start doing. Talk about atomic habits, using that as building a foundation to build habits that allow you to be productive. Like, as I said, building the habit of scheduling quarterly audits of what you are doing.
Yep.
That's a habit, and that helps move you forward. But also, accountability is a huge one as well.
Yeah.
If you are making music, you're probably in a music scene. If you're in a music scene, you probably know other artists who are trying to make a living doing the music industry. And if you do, first, share them this podcast so they can listen to it.
Shameless plug.
But second thing, talk to them about what your goals are, what you're doing, and ask them what they're doing, and then set up an accountability system so that way they check in on you to make sure you are progressing in your career, and you can check in on them to make sure they're progressing. Race together, grow together.
Yep.
And then also, when something new comes up or you need another task to be fulfilled in order to move on to your career, you can use them as a resource to see what kinds of people they know that are masters at their craft that can better benefit what you are trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So building, it's who you know.
Yeah.
It's all who you know. So if you have an accountability set up and then you also have the discipline to follow through on it, that's the end of it. That cherry on top that cements your path forward that you've built throughout the SMART goals, the 4 quadrants, atomic habits, all that. That's the roadmap to walking down this line and moving forward.
Beautiful. We just gave you guys a bunch of, tips, book recommendations. Stick to one, because we just gave you 4 book recommendations. Don't go from book to book to book. Actually finish Atomic Habits first and then go to the next one. I keep saying Atomic Habits first, but it's just it's an essential. It's an essential at this point. I think it's an essential just in life.
Oh yeah.
This is just a life book that you should probably read by the time you die, right?
And you bring up a good point that's kind of a downside of this podcast. And the real thing is, like, we're not helping with shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Because we release a new episode every week. And if you're just discovering this, you might be tempted to binge it. And if you're binging it, you might think, oh, that's a good idea. I should do this. Oh, this is a good idea. I should do with that. That's kind of why we recommend go to this episode, then go to this episode, then go to this episode, to try to give you a framework, some sort of roadmap, that allows you to stick to what you need to do.
Exactly.
And if you want help, just before the end, a real quick plug. If you want help with this, you can contact me at swsrecordings.com. I do one-on-one artist development coaching, and we can build a roadmap that's specific versus just scattershotting all of these podcast episodes at you.
Exactly.
But yeah. The
Yeah.
podcast doesn't necessarily help with the shiny object syndrome.
We kind of make it worse a little bit, but
once
that's
you
how
find
we
it,
get the
stick with
information out.
Yeah.
Though. Yeah. We kind of have to, put it on a platter, and then like Sean said, we try to draw up roadmaps for you guys along the way, so you guys don't maybe veer off in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And like the hardest part is making a podcast too that's a roadmap all the way through. That is extremely difficult to do. We kind of just like, when we get the topic in our head, we're like, yeah, that's a great idea. And it might have been since episode 6 when we last maybe talked about something like that, so we always try to point you guys in the right direction. So, but just, stick to what you're doing, see it out, finish it. And I promise you, before you move on, you'll be very happy with yourself. Promise. Yeah. And that, personally, for me, that would start with Atomic Habits. So, just saying.
Atomic Habits by James Clear and episode 6, SMART goals.
Yep. Love that book. Love that episode.
It's such a good book. I've read it 3 times now.
Have you? Yep. I think I'm on. This would be my 3rd when I started next.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which we both. That's like one of our yearly books.
Yep. Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
That is a yearly listen, and I love always hearing the baseball story in the beginning of it. It's just the best. When I hear that, I'm like, yeah,
I'm in for a good ride.
We're starting this journey again. Yeah.
So yeah, to summarize, shiny object syndrome, SOS. Which is what you're going to be saying when you have shiny object syndrome because you need help.
Yep.
It's definitely prevalent in this industry, and it's really easy to fall into. And if you do fall into it, don't feel bad about it.
Right.
Just do your best to recognize, schedule an audit, and get yourself back out and progress down the line as soon as possible. But it happens.
Yeah, I would say, like, if you are able to become conscious and recognize what is happening, then you are better than probably at least 50% of other people. And that's not to say
50%. I would say 90.
Would you?
Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to really be mean, and I didn't want to make it sound like elitist, But I mean, you're right. You're probably better than at least 80% of other people. 80-20 rule. I gotta stick to it.
Fair enough.
So don't feel bad. Just know that there is value in you becoming conscious of it, within itself. So that is already a minor victory right off the bat. So just stick to it, like Sean was saying. Yeah. It's tough to do. We live in a society where we're constantly marketed to, even when we're driving. There are billboards, on YouTube, we are constantly given ads. On TikTok, we're given ads. On TikTok, we're given TikTok, which is a whole nother thing. We are almost driven into this ADHD-esque society where our attention is being grabbed at all sorts of different places, and it's designed like that to get us to spend money and time on these things, right? So once you're able to become conscious of that, and I'm not going into some capitalist society voodoo weirdo shit, but once you're able to become conscious of that, that is like a minor victory within itself, and then you can start on this journey of eliminating shining object syndrome. Yeah.
And I don't want to sugarcoat this at the end. Once you start this journey, once you make out your SMART goals, put your 4 quadrants around them, make your path towards success, and start following through. We just kind of ran through it in 10 minutes, talking about all the ways you can deal with it. This is hard work.
It is.
This is going to be very, very, very hard.
Yep. Yeah. It's very easy to slip back into.
Very much so. Because especially depending on what your current habits are, it's incredibly easy to slide back or half-ass. And as I mentioned, we don't half-ass, we whole-ass.
Yep, that's right.
So whole-ass your strategy and getting through it, because it will just help improve your career as a whole. But yeah, if you've had any struggles with shiny object syndrome, let us know. You can leave a comment on this episode if you're watching it on YouTube, or you can DM or leave a comment on any of the shorts we post on TikTok and Instagram. You can also send us a message at podcast@musicmakerscookbook.com. We'd love to hear your stories behind shiny object syndrome, because it's something we all deal with. Or if you just want to talk and say hi, you can do that too.
It's like an anonymous, shiny objects anonymous, anonymous.
Shiny objects anonymous. Yeah. I like that. SOA.
That's right.
Which stands for shit out of luck. No, it doesn't.
That's SOL. Fuck. Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy. That's what it is.
There you
okay.
Go.
Well, I'm smart. But yeah, so please let us know your thoughts on this topic. If there's any other topics you'd like us to cover moving forward in the future, let us know. Anything that grabbed your interest of recently, or things you want to tackle next, or actually, no, not that. Things that are on your path to success, things that you need to tackle next
Even
to
better.
Really move down the line, but you want some help with. Give us a comment, let us know, and we will, come up with a podcast episode about it and make it to help guide you in the future.
That's right.
Yep, we'll be your accountability buddies.
Hey, I like that. Yeah. Accountability buddies.
So also that being said, that's how you can contact us both for this podcast. If you want to just work with Brandon, how can they contact you, Brandon?
Well, you can find more information about me and what I do, which is recording, mixing, and mastering and production. These days. You can find more about that at studio222recording.com. You can fill out a message there, and I can try to get back to you as soon as possible. You can also find my email on there, but I will not get that out here because I don't want to dox myself. You can also find me on all social media platforms at Studio222Recording and at _Brandon McLeod. And I'll try to get back to you through DM, but like Sean said last episode, I don't really answer my DMs all that much, so they just kind of fall by the wayside. So hopefully I'll get back to you if I see it. If not, just reach out to me. Again, over DM if it, or over email. That's the easiest. Sean, what about you?
If you have folk, rock, or acoustic music that you need remote mixed and mastered, you can contact me at swsrecordings.com. Those are my specific genres that I'm really good in. Those are the niches that I've kind of found myself in. So if those are your genres, I'm good to work with because that's my focus. Aside from that, as I mentioned earlier, if you want one-on-one artist development coaching to kind of help guide what you need to do next, build the next steps, create a SMART goals list alongside with you, just kind of a helping hand and some accountability to moving forward. You can also reach out through swsrecordings.com and send a submission in there. Like Brandon, I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. And you can send me a DM, but I don't check it too often because social media is not one of my priorities.
Same.
I will get back to you. I will. But if you want an immediate response or more detailed response, definitely reach out to me through the website. That is the way to do it.
Facts.
With all that being said, hopefully this was a helpful episode to you. We've stocked the pantry with some new ingredients, some new things, some old ingredients too. We pulled some old ingredients in the back to the front. They're still good. They're not expired.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're good to cook with.
Preservatives in there.
Exactly. They're good to cook with still.
That's right.
So grab as many as you need. Don't use the things you don't to build your recipes, to cook up some success in the future. And with all that being said, from our kitchen to yours.
Bon appetit.
All right.
Nice, dude. We got another one in the backlog. Let's go.